Joining us now is Congressman Pete Hoekstra, former chairman of the House Intelligence Committee, former congressman from the state of Michigan, joining us once again. Hey, Congressman, how are you, sir?
Hey, I'm doing just fine. Thank you.
Well, thank you for coming back, and we do hope to hear from you often right here on the show. We appreciate that. All right, let's talk about, and let's start with Egypt, if we might. Today we had at least 51 people killed as demonstrations enraged, by the military overthrow of President Morsi. Supporters of the Muslim Brotherhood took to the streets, and this shows no signs of waning. It appears it's only going to get worse. Again, where do you see our role, our administration, our responsibility, our military aid? Talk about the United States and what its responsibility to this point has been and what we should be doing going forward.
Well, I think if there's one thing that people can say about our message in the Middle East over the last 5 years, is that it has been very, very inconsistent. We didn't stand with the people in the streets in Iran with the Green Revolution. We then threw Mubarak under the bus. And then, in the last few weeks, we've been very, very quiet as Morsi has come under pressure. Morsi is now gone. And, I think, we need to decide exactly what we want in the Middle East. Clearly, it is it's vital to United States interests, but we need to outline exactly what our policy objectives, our foreign policy objectives are going to be in the Middle East. Is it to build democracy? Is it to have security? Is it to have stability? Is it to have protection of human rights? Exactly what is our strategy? We have not gotten a consistent message out of the Obama administration. A year and a half, 2 years ago under Mubarak, the message was democracy is the most important thing. We had elections. Those elections have now been, basically overturned by the intervention of the military. So now it looks like we're looking for something else, maybe a protection of human rights. We're not satisfied with the Muslim Brotherhood. But clearly, America needs to articulate what our priorities and what our principles are. We have not done that. No,
we haven't done that. And to what extent, sir, do you hold the Obama administration responsible for the election of the Muslim Brotherhood? I know it was an open election. I know it was a free election. But nonetheless, it seemed like the president coddled President Morsi, a man who has made derogatory statements about Jews and others. He clamped down on the Coptic Christians. He was looking to override the will of the public with Sharia law. He declared that he was above the Constitution, and his laws and his decrees were without question. Do you think that our administration should have spoken up much, much sooner before this eventuality?
Well, I think, we sent a clear signal, or this administration sent a clear signal when the president went to Cairo to give his famous speech on reaching out into the Middle East and changing America's image and perception throughout the Middle East by opening the door to the Muslim Brotherhood, which I think ultimately planted the seeds for the overthrow of Mubarak. We then have coddled with the Muslim Brotherhood after they won the elections, and we saw what they did. They didn't clamp down on the Coptic Christians. They started an era of persecution and the killing of the Coptics. Thousands of Coptics have felt the need to flee from Egypt, and rightfully so. I mean, human rights abuses have totally escalated under the Muslim Brotherhood, and this administration never stood up to Morsi and his government and said, that America will cut off aid if you do not respect human rights and those types of things. We want stability, we want security, but we want the protection of religious minorities and other minorities throughout Egypt. We never stood up to the Muslim Brotherhood, and as the people finally took to the streets, again, this administration was relatively quiet, and we didn't know where to find them and what their position was in that insecurity and that lack of certainty is what, again, has led us to some of the problems that we have today.
We're talking to Congressman Pete Hoekstra, former chair of the House Intelligence Committee here on the Steve Malzberg Show. All right, what about foreign aid? What about our aid to Egypt and the military? Well over $1 billion a year. If we classified this as a military coup, as some around the world have, I don't think our government has, then legally we have to withhold that aid. So how do you think that should be handled going forward by the Congress and by the administration, sir?
There are arguments for and against the military aid, but I don't think there's any question that this was a military coup. American law says that when you throw out a democratically elected government, foreign aid will be suspended. We should suspend the foreign aid. We are a country of laws. And we shouldn't try to parse some words or parse some activities and actions and say, well, this really wasn't a military coup, and by this definition or that definition, it really isn't. The bottom line, it is the overthrow of a democratically elected government is a serious issue. In the interim, we should cut off foreign aid to them. I personally think that this government is going to be more respectful of human rights. They're going to be friendlier to the U.S. than what the Morsi government has been. But again, we are a country that has the rule of law. This administration has been more than generous in deciding which laws it will implement and live by and which ones it will not. But this is one that we should live by, all of them. But this is one we should live by. We should suspend aid. If the president wants to give aid to this new government, then it's his requirement to come back to Congress and change the law or get a vote of Congress to support this government. He just can't say, well, the law's out there, but I'm not going to abide by it.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, because that's a perfect transition, sir, into my next topic, and that is the Obamacare health mandate.
Yep.
Congress passed this health care law. Does the president have the power to say, well, the law is supposed to start, next year, but we're gonna push it off a year and change this part and give exemptions here and change that? He's circumvented the Congress on so many issues over the years of his presidency, and there are some who are questioning the legality of his being able to do this. And as a follow-up, let me ask you. I know that the House has passed the termination of the health care bill several times, but aren't they still able to say, because they control the purse strings, that going forward we will not pass a dime, not for the IRS, not for any agency, that will make Obamacare possible? So if you can take those two questions, sir.
Sure. Number one, it's the president a couple of years ago, he said, well, we're going to basically implement the DREAM Act, which was for immigration. And we're not going to do it by, Congress passing legislation. I'm just going to pick and choose what parts of immigration law I'm going to enforce and which ones I'm not. He's doing the same thing now with health care. And, Steve, that makes us look an awful lot like a banana republic rather than a constitutional government where, you actually pass laws and you live by the laws that you implement. What the president is now seeing is that the mandate that every company over 50 employees, pay a penalty or provide health care is not workable. It's very, very unpopular. So he's going to delay it. He's going to delay it for a year so it goes out beyond the midterm elections. He's also giving states the latitude to say, you know what, this income verification for whether you're going to get a subsidy or not, that's not really all that important. We're going to give you latitude on that as well. And, you can't implement health care where you've got a president and an executive branch saying, well, we're going to do this, but, we don't really care what the law says. We're just going to modify it so that it kind of works for us. And the end result is you and I aren't going to know how it works. We don't know what the budget implications are going to be. It's no way to run a government. If the president wants a delay in this, he should go back to Congress. He should negotiate with Congress and say, hey, we need to change these parts of the law. Let's work through that process and let's make it work. Let's not do it by unilateral action. Congress clearly the House clearly has the authority with the purse strings to say, we're not going to fund parts of this. And that's how we're going to negotiate with the president for reform. I hope that's exactly what they do. The president, by his recent decisions, is clearly indicating that he recognizes parts of the Affordable Care Act are not affordable. They're not going to improve health care. They're in trouble. The House Republicans, the House should now negotiate with the president, put in reforms, because they're not going to be able to terminate it with this president, but put in reforms that they gives them the opportunity to fix as much as they can, because clearly this thing is starting to fall apart.
Right, under the threat of not funding it, correct? Now, when would be the next opportunity to do that? Because I've talked to people who are a little befuddled because they're like me, that we're not politicians and we're not lawyers, and we don't understand why that hasn't been done yet, because this bill has been passed for several years. So when is the next opportunity for the House to say, President Obama, you're not getting the money for this unless we talk? So when could they do that?
They can do that right now. Government is funded through September 30. And so right now Congress is going through the appropriations process where they are passing spending bills that will fund the government beginning on October 1 of 2013.
So they got to hurry up, right? If Boehner's going to do this, we'll hear about it soon, right?
If they're going to do it, you're going to hear it right now. You've got a debt limit ceiling coming up. All these things are on the table. Now is the time now is the time and the opportunity for House Republicans to act. The president has admitted parts of the law aren't working. They have the tools at their disposal to have a negotiation with the president and to work their will. Absolutely.
Well, Congressman, very informative, and I certainly hope your colleagues, your former colleagues, take your advice, because it's getting very frustrating.